Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Transit Choices monthly meeting. My name is Robin Budish. I am the Executive Director. Our mission is to strongly advocate for an equitable, safe, reliable, and efficient multimodal public transit system for Baltimore and beyond. We're delighted to have two very important presentations for you this morning, and also thrilled that you will have the opportunity for an active and engaged discussion regarding the presentation topics. So with that said, I would like to warmly welcome our first guest presenter, Holly Arnold. Holly is the administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration, and her presentation is titled MTA Agency Updates. Welcome, Holly.
Good morning. Thank you, Robin. And thank you all for having me. So if it is all right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I'll dive right in. There is a lot of good stuff going on at MTA. And so I was trying to pick a few things to highlight, but I'm definitely can't get everything just because there's so much going on. So our vision for MTA, we want to provide a transit system. I'm sorry. Oh, someone's just on me.
I hit because he keeps scratching.
Oh, I think you need to mute, Laura. There we go. So we want to provide a service that is frequent, reliable, and easy to use. And that really ties into the governor's goals of leaving no one behind. You know, transit is such a key aspect of that. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing across the board, mostly focused on reliability right now, because that is key. You know, we can't necessarily increase our frequency until we get reliability where it needs to go. And so that is the main focus at the moment. So speaking of focusing on reliability, bus is really where we're having the largest struggle. And so we have a huge focus on making sure we're looking at our bus reliability. So there's a bi-weekly bus operations data review meeting that includes all management from throughout the agency that is really focused on all the different aspects of this. So how do we get enough workers to come in? How do we make sure the training is on point? From the operations control center, how are they taking a look at the service on the street and avoiding bus bunching and making sure that folks are logged in? We get daily reports to senior leadership looking at on-time performance, service availability, and a big focus there. And we've made a lot of improvements in our data and business intelligence capabilities that allow us to have a better understanding of kind of how the service on the street is performing in more real time. The biggest key here is just addressing the workforce challenges, which I will dive into in a little bit. So on-time performance is pretty key. You can see in the spaghetti here, core bus is the blue line towards the bottom, and we're not trending in the right direction. Our goal is 80% or more on-time performance. And over the past year, we've held fairly steady between 70 and 75%, but with a slight downward trend. The biggest issue we're having right now is just that the traffic patterns post-COVID haven't really settled like it used to be. Like in the fall, we knew what the traffic patterns were going to be, and that hasn't happened yet. And so we're continuing to take a look at what traffic is doing, what run times on all of our performance looks like. And the main focus of our service changes is how do we improve reliability? Because we have that data, we're able to identify, hey, these are specific areas where we're running into issues. And also, can we work with the city on adding dedicated bus lanes or a queue jump, or we need some signal timing in these areas? And so we are continuing to really hone in on that, and with the focus of getting our on-time performance back up where it needs to be. And again, the goal is 80% or more. And so we're not going to let off on that. Speaking of mobility on improvements, so on-time performance there was a huge issue when I first started in this role, and we saw a big drop in that due primarily to workforce availability. A lot of operators had left, but we did a big focus on how do we improve that. We made some increases to the operator wages, and we brought on new contracts. So we went from 2 contracts to 3 contractors just because the scope of our service is so large. That happened in 2022 May 2022. And you can really see since then, there's just been a steady increase, and we've been holding steady between 90 and 95% on-time performance since then. Ridership on mobility continues to increase. We're very close to pre-pandemic ridership on mobility, and some days we do hit that between our our core service on mobility and the call a ride service. On like a heavy Wednesday, we're doing about 11,000 rides. So it is a significant amount of folks that are riding. And so we're continuing to make sure that we're focusing on on-time performance, improving the time that folks are spending on the vehicles, and we're using a supplemental TNC to help us kind of handle some of those peaks. We've also made a lot of customer-facing improvements. So we launched a mobile app that folks are able to use to book their rides, and they can see where the actual what the real time is for that, which is something we've been working on for a really long time. We've got a lot of positive feedback from riders on that, and we'll continue to focus on how do we improve and make better our service to our most vulnerable riders. Another aspect of reliability is service delivery. So on-time performance is important, right? Like, are we showing up on time? But I think even more important than that as a rider is my bus going to show up at all? Or is my train going to show up at all? And so we have a better trend here. So the bus is the green line there. And so you can see, back in January, we were delivering about 87% of all of our service. So that means 1 in 10 rides or 1 in 10 buses wasn't going out. It's bumpy, but as we've been hiring and really focusing on absenteeism, there have been pretty steady increases across the board. And so most days now we're closer to 95, 96% of service delivery. We're still not where I want to be. We need to get to 99.5%, like 100% of service that goes out and hit that 80%. So a lot of work still to come, but the trend here is going in the right direction, and we're going to continue to focus on this. We are operating the national labor context. I think is really important because, we're not just operating here in a bubble. The impacts across the nation have also had an impact on us. And so, I shared some headlines here, but, labor shortages really across the board, it is an issue. Hiring folks is an issue. And so we've been doing a few things to focus on that. Again, public transit, APTA has done a few surveys. 96% of agencies are experiencing a workforce shortage. I just got back from a conference in Orlando a couple of weeks ago, and again, talking with other CEOs down there, this is a struggle that we're all facing, and we're all still kind of working through, like, how do we address this? Pay is one piece, but the other piece is, we hear that folks quit because of schedules, right? Like especially when you're first starting and you don't have seniority, you're not going to get a weekend off. There's a good chance you're going to have to work nights, and that's tricky for folks. And so as an industry, we need to really grapple with that, partner with our union, and make sure that we're taking a look at that. And so we're doing that here at MTA as well. There's also a lot of complex regulatory issues. Because it's federal DOT, there's drug and alcohol testing, the requirements for CDLs, age requirements, criminal background checks. The process to hire and train takes a while, just because you have to go through all that testing and background checks. And then the training itself for us is 10 to 12 weeks. So even once we hire someone, they're still not going to be out in the system until 2.5, 3 months later. And then across the board, as in transit, there's an aging workforce. 43% of transit workers are over 55. And so we need to figure out how we're going to recruit and train, retain that younger generation and interest them in careers in transit. So what are we doing here at MTA? So we have really focused on stepping up our recruitment. Pre-pandemic, we didn't do a lot of recruitment. We put out an advertisement and folks came to us, and that's changed. We need to go to people now. So we do job fairs, we do a lot of advertising, we're out on social media. We've made some improvements to the hiring website, so it's actually easier to understand how to apply and what the job pays. We've done a couple of on-site hiring events, and we have, so the first one that we did earlier this year was incredibly successful. We had 200 people attend. We made 86 contingent offer letters. We have an event coming up this Saturday, focused not just on bus operators, but basically across the entire agency. Hey, these are all the positions that we're hiring for. There'll be hiring managers there to answer questions. And we really just want to encourage folks to come out and learn more about the agency. We have accelerated our training and onboarding schedule. I've challenged HR to cut 25% off of the time it takes to hire. And we've added an additional training class so that we're doing 3 classes of training now instead of 2 at any given time, which is helping to get people in the door more quickly. And I think the biggest thing that we've done is honestly some agreements with the union to increase wages. So last December, we did about a 10% increase in the starting wage for newly hired bus and rail operators, as well as cost of living adjustments. Then in May, June timeframe, the beginning of the summer, we worked with the union again to do a decreased time to get to top rate. So it used to take you 5 years to get to top rate. Now it only takes 3. And so we are hiring people at that year 3 rate, which increased that starting rate. So now if you want to come in as a bus operator, you can start out at almost $27 an hour. So it is really a competitive starting wage. Regular raises, overtime potential, like it is a great rate. And so we're making sure that we're getting that out there so that folks can understand that and want to come over and work for us. We're also focused on the agency culture and how we can build the culture, let folks know like what is expected when they come here. And a lot of engagement that goes along with that. So we have our InReach program, which I think we've presented on previously, but I go out every Wednesday and I'm talking with folks at our different divisions. We have a team that is also going out on a regular basis and making sure that the needs of the front line are being transmitted up to management so that we can address those. I do a half day with Holly program, so folks can apply and have me come spend half a day seeing what they do, which has been really fantastic. I'm able to identify some pain points and get those addressed and be able to share the important behind the scenes work that's happening in many cases. The picture down there at the bottom is me with our money runners. And so, they're out in the middle of the night working. I don't want to share too much because they do have money, but it's a really important job that I'm able to see and share with the rest of the agency and with folks that like, hey, these are all the types of things you can do at MTA. We also do an employee wellness program. So on a quarterly basis, we go out and we talk about mental health, we talk about nutrition, we talk about, taking care of yourselves. And so we, share like smoothie recipes. We've done squat challenges. I think everyone is looking forward to the one in December. So we'll have some folks coming in and doing chair massages, but it's really letting folks know, hey, we appreciate you and we want you to be here at the agency. So all those things that I've talked about, our vacancy rate, we are starting to see an improvement. You can see here again, the blue line is overall, orange line is operators. We were holding fairly steadily through the first half of the year. The new wage structure went in place at the beginning of the summer. Again, it takes 3 months to actually bring people on board, but we are definitely seeing a huge decline in terms of the vacancy rate. And we're continuing to push forward on that because we just need to get in more operators and continue to get more folks out on the system. So we are hiring if anyone on the call is interested or knows anyone that's interested. All right, I wanted to also focus on some project updates. I'm not going to hit on everything because there's a ton going on, but kind of the biggest stuff across the agency. And again, it goes back to that focus of how do we provide service that is frequent, reliable, and easy to use. So speaking of easy to use, new Metro rail cars, for the first time in 40 years, we're going to get new rail cars for our Metro system, which I am thrilled about. Every time I ride the Metro in those kind of like bumpy seats, I definitely want to replace those. So the first of our new rail cars arrived on site in September. We're going to be using those for testing. There's a lot of testing and commissioning that has to take place once they're here. It's about 18 months worth, but it'll be fantastic once those get out. And so we'll be doing some kind of more events as we get through the testing process and letting folks know when they're going to be going into revenue service. On the light rail side, again, a lot of movement there. So we did an overhaul of the rail cars that is nearing completion. They still have 6 of our cars up in New York, but the rest are here on site. That said, we still have some reliability issues with the overhaul. We started the overhaul kind of too late. Like it should have been a true midlife overhaul starting at 15 years. And at this point, the fleet, we're still going through it. And the fleet is past its 30-year useful life, the original fleet. So we're starting the process now of transitioning it. So we have a fleet transition program management plan. So we're working on vehicle specs, development of an RFP for that. We also need to replace the signal system as a piece of that, because that is aging. And as we're looking at new vehicles, we're looking at low floor, modern, accessible vehicles so that are not as big and not as wide, which means that we're going to need to do station replacements, which is a really great opportunity to think about, improving the rider experience, improving Howard Street in particular. It's, as we're going to come in and rebuild stations and replace track, we can think about how we can actually make Howard Street a place that people want to be. We're looking at the potential to increase frequency and service hours. I really want to figure out how we can get more service on Sunday in particular. And so this is a big piece of, replacing this fleet allows us to do that. We're also looking at the possibility, Allison's going to talk about the red line in a little bit, but if light rail is the selected mode, we have the chance, because we're buying these now, to have an interoperable fleet. So that's a really exciting opportunity as well. Hitting on the Purple Line. So the Purple Line, not here in Baltimore, but a huge investment and project that the agency is undertaking. It has had its fits and starts throughout the years, but we're moving full steam ahead. Right now, we're about 60% complete with the construction. We have more than 1,100 workers at over 60 active construction sites. We've been doing a lot of community outreach recently. The biggest thing here that I'm incredibly excited about is that we are 98% complete with utility work, which means we're out of the ground. So once you get out of the ground, it's a lot easier, because like once you're in the ground, you don't know what you're going to run into. So we've been laying track, we've been building stations. There's actually like a station at Riverdale that has gone up, which is pretty exciting. The vehicles are mostly complete. We had a team that went up to see them earlier this month, and those are going to start to come in 2024. So real progress there, and will help with regional connectivity, even from Baltimore, right? Like if you're trying to go from Baltimore to Rockville or Baltimore to Bethesda, you can now do that when the Purple Line is going to be complete. I'm not going to hit on red line because Allison's hitting on that, but as a kind of early stage for improving service along the east-west corridor, we did launch the Quick Link 40 service in late August. Those have been around for a minute. It's similar to the Quick Bus 40 that we did previously. It's been proven really popular. Ridership continues to increase month by month over there. Runs from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, and it is about a 25% reduction in travel time for CityLink Blue and CityLink Orange riders. So we're excited about that. I'd like to look, as we're able to increase our operators, at other places that we can do kind of a quick link service. So more to come on that one. RAISE, which is the federal US DOT discretionary grant program. It's had many names: Tiger, Build, RAISE, but RAISE is the most recent one. We have been incredibly successful at going after those discretionary dollars. And so we won in 2021 our East-West Priority Corridor project, so $22 million for that. That is, back to that CityLink Blue and Orange, it's infrastructure improvements, so dedicated bus lanes, queue jumps, transit signal priority, to really focus on how do we do like kind of it's not a short-term, but midterm improvement as we're thinking about the longer-term improvements to the red line. In 2022, we partnered with Amtrak and Penn Station partners to look at some improvements at Penn Station. So we won a $6 million award there for a total $12 million project. And this is a big focus on multimodal enhancements. So it's primarily outside of the station. So it's dedicated bus lanes, bicycle improvements, pedestrian infrastructure that support that station redevelopment. And then most recently in 2023, we were awarded $20 million for the Mondawmin Transit Hub. So there's some station upgrades here, as well as pedestrian safety, ADA and bike improvements as you're kind of getting a little bit further from the station. So we have a ton of bus service and rail service that goes into the station, but as you kind of leave the station, you're trying to walk around, it's not a great pedestrian environment. So we're excited to partner with the city and focus on pedestrian improvements there. Our Fast Forward program is a program that we launched a couple years ago, really focused on like, how can we do some kind of quick hit, quick win projects that improve, again, reliability, make the system more accessible and easier to use. So far, we've done 45 new bus shelters across the Baltimore region. We have 75 more planned for next year. We're making over 200 stops to be ADA accessible. Accessibility is a huge focus of mine. A couple years ago when we were doing the RTP, we determined that only 19% of bus stops in the region are accessible. And so that's a number we have to change. Like we have to work as a region to change that. And so we're partnering with the city and with the county on that. We're doing wayfinding sign improvements at all light rail stations and the Charles Center Metro, trying out some e-paper real-time information signs at 27 bus stops. A lot of us have phones and are able to do that, but for folks who don't, being able to show what that real-time information is really important. We're adding bike racks finally at every MTA rail station, and we're going to be adding marked bike cars. So 14 marked bike cars will be equipped. And so that means that on the Penn line, every peak period train will actually have a bike car, because right now one of the biggest issues we're having is we're unfortunately turning people away because we don't have enough space for bikes on the cars. We're also doing some dedicated bus lanes. So we have some pilot ones that we've done on York Road, Hartford Avenue, and Charles and Light Street. More in design on Pratt and Lombard, and we're working with Baltimore City DOT on automated enforcement for those, so that we can make sure that we're investing in this and we're keeping people out of the bus lanes. We're making improvements in our real-time system. So we now have real-time available on every mode, which is incredibly exciting, but we need to make sure that it is actually working and that it's improving every single day. And so we, you can see here on the right, there's a picture of, detour detection. So we're partnering with Swiftly and with Transit app so that the system can identify when a bus is going on a detour and share that information with the rider. Because right now, if we have to do if it's a planned detour, we can get that out there. But if it's a last minute detour because of, DPW or someone else who needs to do work in the roadway, we don't have a great way of letting the rider know that. And so this allows us to, as you're standing there looking at Transit app or on the real-time signs, be able to show like, hey, the bus isn't going to come here. Here's where the detour is going instead. So look for that to, more to come on that one, but I'm excited. We're one of the first in the country partnering with them on this. And so I'm really advanced there. We're also working on, as we do shuttle buses when we have issues on Metro or light rail. Right now, you can't track those buses. And so we've been working on improvements there. You can see the most recent one we did, we were able to get that up and showing. So we'll continue to work towards that and make it so that if we do have to do a shuttle bus, we don't want to, but if we do, that folks will be able to see where those are. On the MARC side, we are updating our MARC long-range plan. So it's the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan. You can see a link here to the survey or a QR code. If you haven't filled it out already, I would definitely encourage you to do that. This is essentially laying out like what is the long-range vision and goals for our MARC program. And so the survey, I think, does a great job of talking about trade-offs of different options, right? Like, weekend service versus extended weekday service, more peak hour versus throughout the day. Like, what do folks really want to see? I think for a lot of people, the answer is everything, and that's great. But like, let's prioritize that because we can't do it all at one time. Once we are kind of working through this process, the goal is to lay out investment programs with some real timelines associated with them. The Cornerstone Plan did a good job of including, this is what it takes to do things, but we want to add timelines and more information in those and kind of really lay out what is the path forward for the MARC system. Bus side, we are moving forward with electrification. The Maryland Zero Emission Bus Act prohibits us from purchasing anything other than zero emission buses after FY23. So we had a previous order that was in place, and so we're getting 70 clean diesel buses this year, 70 next year, and we're going to be taking a contract to the Board of Public Works later this year for electric buses. So very exciting. There's a lot going on with this. So purchasing the buses is one piece of it, which you would think would be easy, but is actually fairly challenging given the current state of the market of vehicle providers and manufacturers. But so we're working through that. The other piece that's fairly complicated is charging. So we can install charging equipment, but we'll have to work with BGE, and we have bi-weekly meetings with them on upgrading the electrical system so that we can charge all these buses. So that's in the works. And then the third piece of that that's, again, very important is workforce training. So we've developed an apprenticeship program that we're launching with our bus maintenance group. We've done some initial training with our bus maintenance folks, but there's going to be a lot more that comes as we transition them from working on diesel buses to zero emission, electric buses, potentially hydrogen fuel cell, just a lot more to come there. And even for the operators, how they drive them is different. The biggest thing I've heard as they're testing the electric buses that we have now is that you press on the gas and they really go. And so we have to make sure that they understand, like, hey, you drive these differently. Like, we don't want to give folks whiplash as they're taking off an electric bus. So lots of training that goes into this. In terms of infrastructure too, we're also reconstructing our Eastern bus division to a purpose-built battery electric bus division. We our Board of Public Works yesterday approved a contract, so we're bringing on Clark Construction to help us with that, and so we're starting the process there of getting through design, and we anticipate groundbreaking on that one in 2025. So we talk a lot about the red line. We're also looking at other areas where we can expand and improve our service. And so the north-south corridor study, we did a lot last year on that one as part of the RTP implementation plan. And we're working on finalizing the feasibility report, and that is scheduled to be released later in December. And then we'll have more public outreach about next steps on that one early next year. So I think, very excited about the red line, but we need to make sure that we're not letting our foot off the gas on other areas that need improvement. And so the north-south corridor is a key piece of that. The other piece is going to be the Baltimore East Side Access Study, which is looking at going further out from Bayview to further east into Baltimore County. And we're going to be doing an update of the RTP where we're kind of taking a look at like what else needs to come next in terms of our system. So last slide, I'll stop here. The GBC held a forum last week to talk about kind of transit, regional development, how it all ties it together. And I'll tell you, I'm really excited right now. I think that there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of recognition of the importance of transit and transportation to the future of the city. And so we're excited and happy to partner with folks as we move forward with us. So on the TOD front, MDOT is doing studies on how we better utilize our existing assets, how we encourage development around the stations, because we have a lot of investment that we've made. Metro is a great service, and we need to get more folks, living and working and retail around those stations. And so MDOT is taking the lead on that. There's going to be opportunities with Redline. And so we are working already hand in hand with Baltimore City in terms of zoning and development. And let's focus around those future Redline stations. Make sure that our land use policy is supportive of affordable housing and the density and all the things that we're going to need there. The Harbor Place development allows for an opportunity for reimagining downtown Baltimore. I would love to see more complete streets, walkability on, Baltimore, Pratt, Lombard, and improve, our downtown Baltimore space. And I think transit's a huge key piece of that. The Penn Station redevelopment is fantastic and such a great opportunity in Midtown between the Amtrak service expansion, future of MARC, just a lot of great opportunities there. For APTA has put out a lot of data, but for every $1 invested in transit, it's a $4 return in local to the local economy. So we need to continue to invest in transit, both for our economic development, but our climate change goals, reducing congestion, and just getting more people on transit, making a more walkable, friendly city. And so I will stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Holly. Boy, you are one busy lady, you and your team. There is so much going on, and we totally agree that it's an incredibly exciting time. So I'd like to open the floor to questions. If you'd like to raise your hand, I will recognize you. There's also the opportunity for you to pose a question in the chat. So David Bed, would you like to kick us off, please?
Holly, thanks for taking questions. On the West MARC station, you folks are working with Amtrak to build a new station, and you're actually going to go back and build a new berm, making it less convenient for pedestrians, less safe, visible, and flexible. And there's more than 200 feet between Mulberry and Franklin. We've heard the excuse that there wasn't enough room for a tower over there. So could you explain, is there something we're missing on this? Why are we not making a really flexible, safe, open, 21st century station instead of going back to the same old berm we had, which is going to be rebuilt entirely?
So I would argue we are working to make a really great, fantastic 21st century station. We're going to be building a Red Line station along with the new West Baltimore MARC station. We're adding amenities that aren't there today. So there will be elevators. We will have for the first time an accessible West Baltimore MARC station, which is very exciting. We're making improvements so that there will actually be coverage when you're up on the platform, right? Like right now, there's just a few shelters so that it will be a more substantial station. And we're going to really working in partnership with Amtrak, ensure that when you're going from the parking lot to if you want to travel southbound, it's not going to be the current kind of small sidewalk, dirty under the bridge, lighting, wider sidewalks, making it a better, safer, and pedestrian environment.
But you're still making it, you're still making people walk around the berm for several hundred extra feet, and it's less safe walking along the busy roads. And you're making two tunnels instead of making an open, an overpass that could be a glassy, could have a shared station, could combine access to both towers on either side of the track. It defies logic. You're not saving money. What's the logic?
So as I was going to say before you interrupted me, we have looked at, could you go underneath the berm? And it's not wide enough, because you have to have the elevator room, because you have to have a lot of the rooms, so the kind of back office rooms. What you essentially would do there is create a tunnel. And so we've worked on a lot of our stations where we do have tunnels. People don't feel safe. They don't like the tunnels. And so we have determined that the better, safer route is looking at how we can do traffic calming, how we can do wider sidewalks, and make that a much better experience than it is today.
But you don't need a tunnel through the berm if you don't build the berm. And you have 200 feet from one side of Mulberry to the other side of Franklin. It's wide enough to do lots of stuff and very flexible. I hope you'll look at it.
David, with all due respect, we would welcome you, if you have additional comments, to please put them in the chat. I will share those chat messages with Administrator Arnold and report back to you. But in the interest of time, we do need to move on. Kimberly? Let's get her off mute.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm definitely not tech savvy. So Ms. Holly, thank you so much for all of the time and attention that you're doing. Transportation is so important, not just for physical mobility, but economic mobility. And to that end, one of the distressing statistics that I have heard is that for the Trade Point Atlantic area, where there are a number of living wage jobs, it takes somebody an hour and 45 minutes to get from West Baltimore in some of the areas where a living wage would make a tremendous impact on families. What has MTA done, like with all of these efforts? Like, is there a better statistic or a better time frame that we'll be looking at for getting people from West Baltimore down to the Trade Point Atlantic area? Because I feel like that's a fail if we can't get folks to the living wage jobs in a timely manner.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are continuing to partner with Trade Point Atlantic. So we launched our our Express Bus 163 that goes from West Baltimore MARC Station, takes the highway and goes over to Trade Point. It saves about 20 minutes off of the 63 route, so it doesn't have to go through downtown. A lot of ridership on that. It continues to grow month over month, and it's been incredibly popular. And so we're working with them on that. One of the bigger challenges that we have is actually once you get over to Trade Point, like it takes a while to get there, even if you're driving to get over there, because of the way the site is laid out and as big as it is, it takes us about like 40 minutes to drive around. So we spend several hours every day kind of just driving around the station, or I'm sorry, around Trade Point. And so we're working with Baltimore County and Trade Point. We published a kind of small area plan looking at what we could do there. And so more to come. And look for, Kate, I think you're muted. So working with them on how we can make that circulation better. Can we build a hub at the Royal Farms in that area? And so basically we get people in and then other folks transport them around, which then allows us to kind of free up resources to really focus on like, hey, let's just get people there as quickly as we can.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Daniel?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Holly. Thanks for a great presentation. You mentioned the purple line. I was just curious if thinking about the red line coming as well. And I guess I'm thinking first with like the funding model with the P3 model on the purple line, or maybe just more generally, like so far in the construction and in the planning for the purple line, are there any like lessons that you feel your team is learning or big takeaways that you feel like are going to be applicable to the red line?
Absolutely. We have so many lessons learned on the purple line that we will be able to use for the red line and for other projects. On the purple line, I mean, so that is an incredibly unique, complicated project that we're still obviously working through and focused on just trying to get it across the finish line there. The P3 funding model, it's something we're, for transit, it's pretty complicated. There's a few transit projects in the country that have been done with P3s, the purple line being one of those. And it's complicated. So, we're looking at all the different options as we're looking at construction for the red line. But we are going to make sure that as we're taking a look at the different options that we use as lessons learned from Purple.
I know that we have some questions in the chat, and I'm sorry, but we are going to have to move on to introduce our second presentation. As I mentioned, I will be sure that Holly does receive all of the chat messages, and we will get back to you with updates as appropriate. It is now my pleasure to introduce Allison Scott and Jerome Horne. Allison is the Red Line Senior Project Director with the MTA, and Jerome is the Red Line Communications Manager with the MTA. Their presentation is titled Red Line Project Update. We are looking very forward to hearing their presentation. So please, we warmly welcome Allison and Jerome.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hello, once again, Jerome Horne, Communications Manager for the Red Line, and Allison and I are absolutely delighted to be here with you today. Next slide, please. So we're going to go over just setting the context of the project, where we are in the process today, kind of recap what we heard over the summer, give you an update on our preliminary alternatives, and then talk about how you can stay engaged moving forward in the process. So just to recap, the Red Line project addresses a major need in east-west transit for Baltimore. Our bus routes that run east and west today are some of our highest performing and highest ridership routes. And our east-west feasibility study that we did recently really reaffirmed the need for this project, that there is demand there that's not being met, and that this is a critical corridor to move people through and provide access to opportunity, jobs, education, school. Maybe you just want to go hang out with your friends across town. As many know, this project was canceled by the previous governor in 2015, but was thankfully relaunched in 2023 by Governor Moore and is one of his #1 priorities. One of the great things is that we get to build upon a lot of work that was previously done so that we're not completely starting from ground zero with this project. So moving the project forward, as I mentioned, we have a lot of work that's been more than a decade in the making, from previous studies, environmental analysis, engineering, community feedback that we can work on to move this project forward. And as we're going through gearing up for our new round of engagement that's coming up in November with all of our public open houses, and we have currently pop-ups happening, we're gathering and coming back to the public to solicit feedback and input. And once we have our November meetings, we'll be able to take all that information, synthesize it, and begin to move forward to thinking about a state preferred alternative, and we'll get more concrete construction timelines and things like that. We're also working for near-term projects, as Holly mentioned. We've got our East-West Rays, the West Baltimore MARC station, and the Highway to Nowhere, which is now the West Baltimore United. And we're working very closely with the city in that process so that we can get good outcomes and factor that into the design of the Red Line.
All right.
So developing, oh, yeah. And I'm going to hand it over to Allison now.
Sorry. We were trying to decide last night how we would switch off because we both wanted to present to this awesome group. So I'm going to go. Hello. Are you guys there?
Allison,
I'm
I
here.
think you froze up, at least it did with the presentation. This is Kimberly Min, and then it looks like a lot of people left. It was very strange. And now it looks like they're coming back. I think they thought it was their service and but I think it was you that froze
Yes.
up and then,
My computer just went completely blank.
oh, what a
Okay.
fun
Okay.
day.
Are we back?
We're back. Yeah, I
We're
think,
back.
yes, something happened on your end.
Sorry.
Where, not a problem. Please.
Okay.
Yes, not a problem. Please continue.
All right, let's go back. All right, so we're looking at mode right now. So deciding between the light rail and bus rapid transit. We're also heavily focusing on the alignments on the east end of the corridor. The development has really taken off over there in the Highlandtown, Bayview, Brewers Hill area. So we have to look at the alignment since the previous LPA is in conflict with some proposed buildings. And then additionally, we're taking another hard look at tunneling. So a majority, I think over close to 60% of the risk and the cost of the previous LPA was related to the downtown tunnel. So we're just reevaluating both tunnels, the Cooks Lane and downtown Baltimore tunnel, to make sure that they, if implemented, would be the most cost effective, and then comparing that to the surface running. So again, these are our metrics that we'll be looking at in more detail for the fall. Jerome touched upon the adjacent projects that we are also in coordination with for the red line, since there's so much happening along the corridor. So the summer engagement activities, I did already kind of touch on this. What we heard, there were we talked to over 1,500 people. There was lots of vocal support to get the red line built and get it built quickly. There was support for creating the dedicated transit way. When we were describing differences between bus rapid transit and dedicated bus lanes, it was clear that the separation that comes with a transit way, physical separation, like a curb that keeps vehicles out of those lanes, was really important to folks, and obviously important for MTA if you're trying to deliver a reliable service. There were lots of mixed opinions on the tunneling versus the surface. Tons of support for economic development, including TOD. And there was a lot of questions about connections. How are we going to make this new east-west line connect with our existing metro, existing light rail north-south, existing MARC service, and all of our existing bus service as well. All right, so for the alternatives, this is a schematic. I would like to remind folks that you can always go to redlinemaryland.com if you need to zoom in on anything. And we also have maps of each of these alternatives separately, 3 maps for the 3 alignments that you can view in more detail on the website, and will be at our open houses for viewing as well. So there are 3 alignments and there are 2 modes for each alignment, for a total of 6 alternatives that are under consideration presently. The red 1 and 3 follows the existing locally, or the 2015 locally preferred alternative, until you get somewhere over to Bayview where we have to relook at the alignment due to the development. Alternative 1 is that alignment with light rail is the mode. Alternative 3 is that alignment with bus rapid transit as the mode. We also have 2 surface running options that we're evaluating. These were mostly similar to alternatives that were already studied in the previous DEIS study, which means we have a lot of information related to them that was able to give us a head start in developing these alternatives. They both on the west side would travel Security Boulevard, surface alignments along Cooks Lane, and median of Edmondson Avenue. And then once you get to Martin Luther King, that is where we would start to see the difference between the 2 surface alternatives. So I'll walk through the first one, which is surface north, and that is a one-way couplet. So one way on Lombard and one way on Baltimore. And then that would go into a median alignment on President Street, and then split again into one-way pairs on Fleet and Eastern, until we get over to the Brewers Hill area, where we would connect to Bayview and then to the Bayview future MARC station. For the surface south option, that starts to differ right at the Martin Luther King. It's a two-way transit way along Pratt Street, as Holly noted. It would be nice to reimagine all of Pratt Street with the Harbor Place redevelopment and make it more walkable and follow the modal hierarchy of the Baltimore Complete Streets. So this alignment would do that. It would then split on Eastern and Fleet for a short couplet section before getting onto Boston Street and continuing on. So those are the 6 alternatives, again, 3 alignments, and we feel that we have to look at all of this stuff in detail to really vet through this process. And so the biggest thing I think that everybody's waiting for is for the results of comparing these alternatives. So that's what we're going to be coming out with in November. So please pay attention to the website, come out to the open houses. I'll have a slide on those in a moment. But what we're really looking at is that all these alignments have their own benefits, challenges. And so there's not always one perfect solution. So we have to look at those and compare those against each other to come up with what we feel will be the best project for, the city and the state and our constituents here. So we're going to look at the performance. To minority populations.
Allison, excuse me. You froze again.
Really?
Yes. So
You can't hear me?
no, we can hear you now. We
Okay.
can hear. So you may just want to repeat your previous
Okay.
sentence. Yes.
About the connections starting there.
Yeah, just about a sentence or two ago. Mhm.
Okay. So outside of the transit connections that we'll be looking at for the rail and bus, we're also going to be looking at access to jobs, access for low income minority communities, vulnerable populations, how these alternatives provide that access. We're also going to be looking at travel time. End-to-end travel time is obviously something that was a big metric 10 years ago. It's still a metric now. We're also looking at some origin and destination travel times to be able to match patterns that people would be using the red line for, since we found out that over 50% or just around 50% of the trips are expected to be less than 2 miles on the future red line. We're going to be looking at reliability because that's extremely important. As Holly noted, having a reliable and frequent service is what gets people on transit. We're going to be comparing ridership, as well as how long it's going to take to get these alternatives implemented. And then big ones are costs. So the capital costs to build the actual red line, and then future operations and maintenance costs on a yearly basis, comparing those alternatives. And then we're going to start to look at some of the parking impacts in East Baltimore. As I noted, there's that Eastern Fleet couplet that is different from the Boston Street alignment. So we'll have some ranges of potential parking impacts over in those geographic areas. All right, so for the November open houses, we have 4 of them scheduled starting next week on November 2nd. We have, I believe that's a Thursday. Then we have a Saturday one on November 4th at the University of Maryland. And then we have 2 more evening ones in Greektown and Edmondson. And we're working on a 5th community meeting on the west side to fill in some gaps. And also, this is always a point to note that for anyone who's not able to attend in person, the project team is creating a narrated version of the boards and materials, and they'll be posted on the project website for viewing at any time. And then we're always coming out to community association meetings. We were in Canton earlier this week on Tuesday. There was a few folks in Greektown last night. So we continue to go to community association meetings whenever someone reaches out and requests, we come and give presentations. And we expect to be doing that throughout the fall and winter after the results are released. So looking ahead for our timeline, so we're in October. This is our pop-up events and the community meetings. November, as I mentioned, is the open houses, still pop-ups, and then we're going to have a survey that's going to be live all month on the website. At the open houses, we're even going to have iPads specifically for Spanish speaking that will help facilitate on-site surveys so we can get feedback that way. Through the winter, we're going to be looking at that feedback and determining how we're going to evaluate fully these alternatives against each other to come up with a recommended alternative in spring of next year. All right, so here's again how to stay engaged. Our Redline website. You can also find us on X and Instagram at Redline Maryland. And then if you have any questions or you know of any groups that would like us to come out and speak to them, outreach@redlinemaryland.com is a great email address to get that facilitated.
Thank you very much, Allison and Jerome. What a great presentation, a lot of information. I'd like now to open the floor to questions from the meeting participants. You might either raise your hand and I will acknowledge you, or you may put your comment in the chat. We'll do our very best to get to as many of the comments as possible. I'd like to ask a question, if I may, by kicking this off, about the environmental impact study. You know, the original one was done over 10 years ago, and Transit Choices has been sort of getting questions about kind of mixed information that they've heard, if in fact that EIS study can be used for the current project, or if a new EIS study is required.
Yes, that's a great question. Thanks, Robin. So we have been in coordination with FTA. They are our project sponsor, or will be for this. They would be our NEPA document signer as well. So Region 3 is our region. We've coordinated with them. Our expectation is that we will be doing a supplemental EIS. We have submitted some information to FTA that supports that case. We are waiting for feedback, but all indications are that we would be able to reuse the previous study and build off of that with a supplemental.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but I'm going to go to the chat and I'll go back and forth. There's a question from Sue. Will anyone from Baltimore City Department of Transportation be available at the open houses to answer land use questions?
Oh, yes. Okay. Great question. We are partnering very closely with the Baltimore City Department of Transportation, the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development, and the Department of Planning. We meet bi-weekly, and one of the requests that we have had is that somebody from DOT and or Department of Planning is at all of our community association meetings and the open houses with us to partner with us. Specifically, we know there will be DOT folks to discuss the West Baltimore United project, since they're leading that, but we've asked for representation, and we've been seeing that support starting about 3 weeks ago. We've had somebody at all of our meetings now. So they will be at the open houses, yes.
Great. May I ask a favor, if we could possibly take down that screen just so we can go back to
Oh yeah, I'm
the
sorry.
full gallery? No, it's great.
Stop share.
Thank you. Daniel?
Hey, yes, sorry, just a quick question. Allison, Jerome, thanks for a great presentation. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. Did I hear that 60%, 60 of projected cost would, if the tunneling option, one of the tunneling options is chosen, would be dedicated to tunnel construction? Am I understanding that right?
It was the previous, I have to relook at the numbers, the previous project, when it was around the $2 billion at that time, 60% of the project cost was related to the downtown tunnel infrastructure itself, due to the length, the complexity, and the amount of infrastructure required.
Okay, got it. So that was for the previous alignment and the previous plans. Do you have any sort of looking at the current two tunneling alternatives, like kind of what the cost projection would be, I guess like percentage wise, how much of it would be tunnel? And I'm assuming whether it's light rail or bus rapid transit, it's going to be relatively the same, right?
Yes, so you will see in November the cost for each of the alternatives. Since we're still preliminary, we don't have that percentage of cost that is actual tunnel. But if you compare, say, alternative 1, light rail tunnel, to 2A, a surface light rail, you can start to see approximately what that cost difference is for the tunnel. So that will be the easiest way to tell from the information that we have right now available.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Let me see. There's a message. Geely, are you on mic? Okay, he put a message in the chat and unfortunately it disappeared on my screen. Allison or Jerome, are
Hey,
you?
Robin.
Hi, Geely.
Hi. Just a quick question on the, I was kind of curious about the option for BRT in a tunnel. Just wondering, is there any precedent that is guiding MTA's exploration of that option? I am familiar with the one in Seattle, but it eventually was converted into a light rail tunnel, I believe. So just curious about MTA's, what's, I guess, influencing that possible option.
Yes, so what's really influencing that is we took a hard look at the projects that are currently being funded in the Capital Investment Grant New Starts program. And a lot of what's being funded right now is BRT. So to be fair to the process, to be fair to FTA and what is presently being funded for transit projects, we thought that it was prudent to evaluate BRT and LRT head to head. And since we had the LRT in a tunnel, the previous LPA from 2015, we just matched that with BRT to compare those modes head to head. So we weren't really looking at precedent between other cities, but just based on that alternative, since the other alternatives we were going to be evaluating light rail versus BRT, we needed to also evaluate the tunnel alternative for BRT and LRT. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
You're welcome.
Allison, I have another question just for purposes of clarification. So next month, the MTA will publicly be sharing sort of, the data and the findings around the alternatives, or I should say data to maybe support each of the alternatives. And then there will be a series of open house meetings in the month of November as well. And then MTA will go back and evaluate all of that to be able to arrive at sort of the final decision in terms of the alternative that's been selected. Is that an accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. Is there anything that Transit Choices can do to support your efforts, in terms of, the sharing of information, the promoting of, any open house meetings that you have coming up, or anything that we can do to really get the public or keep them, more involved and engaged and updated?
Yeah, certainly spreading the word for our upcoming outreach events. So you folks on these calls understand that often the minority voice can be the loudest. So we need to make sure that we don't just have people who are opposed to the project, but people that support the project. Sometimes folks who support feel like, well, I support the project. There's no reason to go to the open houses because I don't need to learn anything. I just support it. But we really need to hear that positive support, that all that information and feedback comes into our selection. So anybody's preferences on mode is important. If you have a preferred alignment is important. So even if you support the project, what parts of the project do you support? And then for those that are hearing maybe misinformation, like as you noted, that's why we wanted to come out to all these community association meetings so that people were getting the right information. So just being cognizant to share all that, Robin, getting people to come out and hear directly from MTA so that the right information is circling out there.
Great. Yeah, it would be our pleasure to do so. If there are no, yes,
Yeah, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
If people, there's a lot of information being presented here. If people have additional comments or questions, what's the best way for them to communicate to us so we can pass that on to the MTA after the meeting?
You can, yeah, if you can send, I don't know, Robin, are you willing to collect information and then share it with Jerome and myself? Or, I mean, folks can email directly the outreach@redlinemaryland.com, all comments.
sure. What I'm happy to do is at the conclusion of this meeting, at some point today, hopefully before tomorrow, I will send out both the slide decks from both presentations as well as the meeting recording. And I will send to you, Jerome, and Holly, the chat room messages. So you can go through those and respond, get back to us. In addition, I will put your contact information in the general email that I send out. So if people have additional, I can do that, Allison. They can get in touch directly with you and Jerome. Or if you would like us to be the facilitator of asking for questions and comments to group them and send them to you, we're happy to do either.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, folks, it's been a really wonderful morning in terms of all of the information that has been shared with us today. We want to sincerely thank our guest presenters, Holly Arnold, Allison Scott, and Jerome Horne, for spending part of their, what we know are very, very busy days with us. We would love to have you come back to share updates. And I'm so sorry, there's one more. Robert Milner, would you like to get in a quick question before we say goodbye for now?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'd just like to, Tony Green, I want to inform the group real quick. Tony Green has retired as our transportation TDM manager. I'd like to introduce to the group Rodney Harris. He's our assistant director for transportation TDM and operations. So this is Rodney's first meeting. I will send you his contact information separately. So thank you.
Rodney, wonderful to meet you virtually. Welcome. We look forward to having you join us, and feel free to reach out with any questions you have.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Wonderful. And to each of you, we say this every meeting, we could not do this without you, with your interest, with your participation, and with all of the support that you have continued to give Transit Choices for over a decade now, hard to believe. We are extremely grateful. So we wish you all a wonderful day, to be continued, and we will keep you updated on any new information as it becomes available. Take care and have a wonderful day. Thank you.